It was back in 1986 when a sculptor by the name of Chris Van Allsburg, he needed a diversion from his work. So what he did is he wrote a children's book, and he won the 1986 Caldecott Medal. You've probably all read it. It's a book about a young boy on Christmas Eve straining to hear the ringing of the bells on Santa's sleigh, but instead ends up taking a magical train ride to the North Pole to receive a very special gift from Santa Claus. All of his friends didn't believe in Santa Claus, but he knew they were wrong. So when the train arrives at the North Pole, the conductor tells the children that Santa will select one of them to receive the first gift of Christmas. The little boy happens to be the one who is chosen. And although he realizes he could have any gift that he could imagine, he chooses one silver bell from Santa's sleigh. Although the silver bell made the most magical sound, it becomes apparent that not everyone can hear it. In fact, when the boy rings it on Christmas morning, his parents thought it was broken because they couldn't hear a sound. You know the book and the movie, The Polar Express. The final paragraph of the book is this: "At one time, most of my friends could hear the bell, but as the years passed, it fell silent for all of them. Even Sarah found one Christmas that she could no longer hear its sweet sound. Though I've grown old, the bell still rings for me, as it does for all who truly believe." Well, Christmas challenges us to believe. It's magical for children, and it should be. But for us, for adults, Christmas is more than magical. It's a reminder. A reminder that though we have grown up and lost our innocence, there is an awesome power available to the world. And if we believe in this power, we will still hear the ringing of that bell. The lights that we see, the manger scene, the trees, the hymns, they're all reminders to us. They tell us not to forget that the magic of a childhood Christmas must become the mystery of an adult Christmas. A mystery that unleashes power and peace to all who truly hear the ringing of the bell. Unfortunately, too many people today do not hear the bell. Too many people have forgotten, and thus they have no access to this great power and this great peace. What have they forgotten? They've forgotten that God became one of us. Maybe you remember several years ago, Joan Osborne wrote a song entitled exactly that, One of Us. It was the theme song for the TV show Joan of Arcadia, where a teenage girl keeps meeting God in the form of a different person. And the song asks a haunting question. What if God was one of us? Just a slob like one of us? Just a stranger on the bus, trying to make his way home? Just trying to make his way home. Doesn't that describe each one of us well? Now, we might find the story of the Polar Express magical, the train going to the North Pole, wonder-filled. But as humans and adults who are all grown up, and without the innocence of childhood, we need to connect to a deeper power and a deeper peace in the mystery of Christmas that enables us who are just trying to make our way home to survive all the vicissitudes of life. Obviously, as we all know, on our way through life, we are all confronted by so many stark realities. Wars and devastations, unmet expectations, disappointments, losses and failures, deaths, divorce, and violence. These stark realities challenge our beliefs, and at times they can quiet the bell of faith. In the movie Polar Express, Josh Groban sings that wonderful song, Believe. And some of the lyrics are, "We were dreamers not so long ago, but one by one we all had to grow up. When it seemed like the magic slipped away, we found it again on Christmas Day." What do we find? Well, we don't find the magic of a childhood Christmas. We find the depth of an adult Christmas, which is filled with mystery and power and peace and challenge. Again, Groban sings, "When it seems like we've lost our way, we can find ourselves on Christmas Day." Because God is one of us, just a slob like one of us, just a stranger on the bus, trying to make his way home. It's so easy to lose sight of the real meaning of Christmas. Commercialism and consumption overwhelm us the weeks before Christmas. But as we gather tonight, we celebrate the most momentous moment in all of human history. God coming into our world and letting go of his godness and becoming one of us. Human history takes a completely different turn because of this Jesus the Christ. He shows us a whole new way. He came into this real world in which we live in order to show us how to live God-like, in order to show how godness can break forth in each one of us, within every person in our world. Now, some people think that Jesus came because God was demanding a price for sin, that God would send Jesus into the world and kill him in order to pay a price. Be assured that is not it at all. Christmas happened because people had such a fear of God that people imagined God as someone who judges and condemns, that we needed someone like Jesus, the Son of God, to come into our midst to show us who God really is. So what does Jesus help us discover about God? First of all, that God has a deep concern for the dignity of every single person. How do we know this? He became a refugee. He was driven into exile. He was homeless. He was condemned to death like the worst of criminals. So he related to those who are the most marginalized in our world. The refugees, those on death row, those who have no political clout, those who get lost in the system, those who are looked down upon in our society. Secondly, Jesus reveals a God to us who cannot not love us. Just think of the prodigal son. Jesus tells us of a God who believes that we are all lovable. Thirdly, Jesus reveals a God who wants all of us to be treated with equal respect. Women were looked down upon in his society, but not by Jesus. What is God telling us through Jesus? He's telling us that a world where there is justice and fullness of life for every person is possible. So we gather this eve of Christmas as a reminder that God came into our world to show us a new way. The way of God, the way of goodness, the way of love. A new way to break down the barrier that has been built up between individuals and groups and nations. God became one of us in order to change us and allow us to act differently according to his way. And that means that our interactions with one another, in our families, our neighborhoods, our communities, in our world, that each one of us must try to take on the spirit of Godness and live it. We are reminded at Christmas that our God is love, and that each one of us has to reach out in love to one another. The love of generosity, where we share what we have, or that special kind of love that we call forgiveness, where we reach out in reconciliation to one another, or that extraordinary, almost extreme kind of love, where we are willing to place our lives on the line in order to break down hatred through nonviolence. In a very few short months, our new Pope Francis has given us an amazing experience of who God is. He is certainly ringing that bell for all of us to hear in his first encyclical that he entitled The Joy of the Gospels. He insists most especially that we are called to see the face of God upon those in poverty, in the cells of death row, on the homeless man panhandling for change, the immigrant without papers, the vulnerable, the drug addict, the oppressed, the marginalized, and yes, in the faces of the unborn. And moreover, he tells us it's not enough merely to see these lowly as representations of God for us, challenging even as that is. But we are all called collectively and individually, publicly and privately, in our churches and in our governments, to serve them and to serve them with joy, with the tenderness of Mary, with open doors, not as an enemy who critiques and condemns. The Pope tasks us to proceed with more grace and less law, and to remember that we are servants, to love more than to judge. Josh Groban sings, "When it seemed like magic slipped away, we found it again on Christmas Day." The magic is an adult magic, mystery. The grace of God inside each one of us, the incarnation of God in each one of us to make a better world. The bells of faith are silent for many people in our world, and each one of us must recreate the magic. We must share the story and the mystery. We must share the power and the peace. We must listen closely to hear the bells of faith, so that others will hear the bells too. A couple of questions for us this Christmas of 2013. Do we believe that God became one of us? Do we believe that we are called to be Jesus for one another? Do we believe, as Josh Groban sings, we have everything if we simply believe?
I'll hear the laugh of children children in a world where war has been banned. One day I'll see men of all colors sharing words of love and devotion. Stand up and feel the Holy Spirit. Find the power of your faith. Open your heart to those who need you in the name of love and devotion. Yes, I believe in the call of all nations to join and to care for love. I believe in a world where light will guide us, and giving our love will make heaven on I believe in the people of all nations joining to care for love. I believe in a world where light will guide us, and giving our love will make heaven on earth. Yes, I believe in the people of all nations to join and to care for love. I believe in a world and giving our love will make heaven, heaven on earth. Will make heaven on earth. I believe.